Hi everyone, my name is Jannie Kamara. I am a senior double majoring in Black World Studies and Diversity in Leadership. I came to Miami with the intention of learning and gaining knowledge about myself as a Black queer woman in America and to understand how students can drive and lead movements to transform campuses into healthy and safe environments that promote growth and creativity. Today, I'm talking with you all about racial capitalism and the ways that students can support marginalized students who feel unsafe and unwelcomed in this community while taking back your power as students who pay to attend this institution. Let's get started. Let's first define capitalism. Capitalism is an economic and political system that is based on private ownership of the constant means of production and operations for profit. Now with racial capitalism, Dr. Cedric Robinson, a political science and Black studies scholar at UC Berkeley, describes it as the process of extracting or gaining social and economic value and benefits from someone's racial identity, typically Black and brown people. The history of racial capitalism is not only the history of whips, plantations, and slavery, but also unfair wages, overworking in an increasingly violent society, and the creation of this faraway idea of freedom for Black people in this country. So how is this present on college campuses and at Miami? Well, through diversity, the buzzword of the last 10 years. It is plastered across brochures that boast about the promise of an inclusive and safe experience. It's talked about in admissions interviews, but while the word itself is popular among universities across the country, the practice of diversity and intended creation of inclusive spaces for students are often lost in translation. When addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, institutions focus solely on a student's race or identity, oftentimes overlooking other interests and identities, thus creating the student as a form of capital. Miami University loves to construct images of diversity, but it's not shown in its attitudes, practices, and policies. Marginalized students are alienated from this community because of the indoctrination of all students with values such as love and honor that lead them to abandon the material, social, and political interests of their communities. The presence and parading of token minorities is often done to mask larger structural inequalities, as there is this colorblind approach to addressing issues of diversity at Miami, which enables racist practices that maintain and upkeep systems that oppress our community members. Let's talk Miami demographics. Here on Miami's main campus, of a population of 16,522 students, 12,472 students identify as white, which is 75.5% of our campus population. 594 students identify as Black and African American, which is 3.6% of our campus community. That's a huge margin to work with. In Miami's image construction of diversity, the university places Black and brown students on their advertisements to attract these students, but never take the time to actually educate them about the realities of being at a primarily white institution. There is this extra unwarranted responsibility that's placed on Black and brown students as they are expected to serve as educators in an environment where they pay to learn. This places a strain on Black students as they routinely experience white racism in classrooms, residence halls, faculty and academic advisors' office, libraries, and other public spaces adjacent to the campus. It is not my job to teach people in my community who are actively harming me. The university lacks to tending to the needs of Black and brown students while expecting them to solve issues of DEI. The extraction of labor and life from communities of color within our community and around the university exploit their labor and profit from their narratives of trauma. These examples show a practice that reduces one's identity to their only visible characteristics and often regards the less visible aspects. This limits personal expression and categorizes students only in a minority lens. Universities are spaces that aim to educate and protect its students, but this practice only benefits the predominantly all-white institutions themselves more than the well-being of the minority students that it targets. The major purpose of education is not only to learn how to approach the text we read, but also to approach the conditions under which we live. Angela Davis. It is a job of the university to provide spaces for minority students to express themselves and engage in any capacity that they choose. All students need to feel that they are in a campus community that supports and values them, where learning opportunities are developmental, and where they feel a strong sense of identity. As a Black woman on this campus, it is not easy to say at times, I do not feel safe to exist simply because there are members of our community who see my skin as a threat to their existence. I've experienced microaggressive attitudes and languages and forms of intimidation invalidating my experience at this primarily white institution. And the same can be said for so many students, as we saw this summer with Dear Miami. Each and every one of us has a role in protecting, educating, supporting, and empowering our community and sustaining this. But we have to do the uncomfortable work of calling out people to call them in. This is not an easy process, and oftentimes individuals react with resistance, avoidance, or just dismissal. But to raise one's awareness of their actions, you must first make them aware of the harmful impact on the community. So how do you not only create an awareness of harm while educating yourself and others? Well, let's talk about the 4 years of your Miami experience. Well, first, understand that as change makers, actions truly do speak louder than words. Making a commitment to action is about making a commitment to choose a path that disrupts the white supremacist structure. It's about being critical of how the university cares about you and educates you. Next, understand that building a movement is a horizontal process rather than a linear, as there is no one voice that speaks for students, but rather a collective voice to generate movement. So, here's your book of Miami. Chapter 1, freshman year, education, education, education. Obviously, you are here for this, or else you wouldn't pay $30,000 to $60,000 to come here. Education here means understanding the institution, its patterns, and the ways it distracts students from the reality that they are living in. Question everything. The more time that you spend on campus, the more that you'll begin to realize that not everything is as it's made to appear. Talk to upperclassmen about their experiences. Attend events and take classes that are dedicated to critical thinking and expand your consciousness. Get to know the student activists and leaders in your community so that when it's your turn to step into your role, you know who to turn to for advice. Chapter 2, your sophomore year. This is focused on awareness. It's focused on breaking the social norms of silence. There is not only a social culture of silence, but an institutionalized culture of silence that enables people to create and maintain harm. During my sophomore year, I was a part of an organization where 2 individuals said the N-word, and instead of this organization calling out this behavior, they continued the harm by defending these individuals. As one of the 594 Black students on campus, what good does it do to my mental, physical, and psychological safety when community members do not call out ignorance and expect me to do so? So take the time here to go out to the community to organize from the ground up. These tactics can look like creating a culture of community that shares information about their experiences with other students, faculty, administrators. It looks like working with different student groups to hold rallies or teach-ins. Have a vision and a purpose when you hold these events and make sure that people know what they're expecting to hear. And it looks like holding universities accountable for their promises through public callouts and campaigns. Chapter 3, junior year, the rebellion. It is this question of loyalty. In Miami's mission statement, you'll read, it is deeply committed to student success, builds great student loyalty and alumni loyalty, and so on and so forth. My question is, can you be loyal and critical? We are loyal to each other by helping each other become our best selves, which is why we are critical of how this university cares for us. It's time to get uncomfortable and build a movement. You've had 2 years to understand the Miami that exists and the Miami that you want to create. So write down those goals as well as what the things can be passed down. Next, create some short-term goals and sets of corresponding demands, making sure that they are specific, measurable, realistic, and time-specific so that they put pressure, maintain commitment, and are strategic as we are only having 4 years to be here as students. Chapter 4, your senior year. What legacy will you leave? How will you sustain this movement? You're a senior who's burnt out, like myself, so focus on archival work and passing on information to underclassmen through mentoring and guidance. Your role here is to leave a legacy to empower the students after you to sustain this movement. So what did you want to leave here? What did you learn? Miami loves diversity, but doesn't do enough to support its diverse students. As a teaching institution, it is our goal to pursue knowledge and truth. So pursue and disseminate knowledge in ways that benefit and uplift marginalized communities that embrace decolonial ways of knowing when necessary. It is easy to become overwhelmed by, for a lack of better expression, the fuckery that Miami gets up to. But it's important that we stay vigilant, critical, and active. As students at this university, given all of the harm that Miami causes, it is imperative that we take on the responsibility of holding the university accountable and working towards its eventual destruction. Saying it again for the people in the back, you have a responsibility to do something about Miami's fuckery now that you're here benefiting from it. Thank you.